Only Murders in the Building Season 1 finished last month, and fans and critics alike were impressed with what they had seen. Rotten Tomatoes even gave the show a 100% approval rating, which is pretty great. The star-studded cast were well received, and the show left fans dying for more. Today, we're discussing the questions fans are wanting answered in Season 2, so sit back, relax, and don't go anywhere. First up, we want to know how Bunny died. So as we saw in one of the final scenes of the finale, Charles and Oliver receive a worrying text from an unknown person, so off they scoot to Mabel's apartment to see what all the fuss was about. Once they get there, they're greeted with the sight of Mabel sitting in a pool of Bunny's blood. While Bunny appears to be dead, Mabel obviously pleads her innocence, as you do in those situations, right? So what happened? Was she being framed? Did she actually kill Bunny? We just don't know, and we need answers. What was your thoughts on Bunny's death? Let us know below. Next up, we are looking at whether Cinda might have been involved. Stay with us. Cinda was one of the funnier characters on the show, even if she didn't mean to be. She had her own podcast, which was Charles, Mabel, and Oliver's favorite murder mystery, which also provided the blueprint for their own, but it turned into a bit of a rival podcast in the end. Once their show became bigger and bigger, Cinda appeared to become jealous. Was this the motive she needed to frame Mabel? We do see her taking in what has happened at the end of the show, so we know she was in the vicinity. She didn't live around there, so we think there might be something in this for Season 2 to clear up. Is this going to be the inspiration for the next season on the pod? What do you think? Next, we want to know who texted them to get out of the building. As our favorite podcasters were celebrating finding out who was behind the murder of Tim Kono, Mabel leaves to go downstairs and grab some more champagne. Oliver and Charles are then shown hearing the police cars pull up out front when they receive a mystery text. The person behind the text told them to get out of the apartment on the double. But why? Who would warn the guys to leave? Someone who was watching the building, perhaps? Maybe it was Mabel. Had Mabel seen the cars pull up as she had gone downstairs? Was it someone who wanted Mabel to take the blame on her own? Who knows? Who do you think is the most plausible option? We are discussing who else Jan might have killed next, so don't go anywhere. Jan, that lovely psychotic personality who has the tendency to kill boyfriends she feels are drifting away from her. What a diamond she is. We kind of wonder if her character was inspired by that of Love on You, as she also has a propensity for killing people willy-nilly without a care in the world. Charles became all too aware that his fate might lie in the hands of Jan after she admitted to killing Tim, and then comes pretty close to doing Charles in also. It's pretty obvious that Tim hasn't been her only victim, we think, but who else has she offed? Has she prowled the hallways of the Arconia before? Or does she mix it up and stalk other apartment buildings instead? We need to know. Hopefully this is addressed in Season 2, as we would bet our bottom dollar Jan's experienced in the art of killing. So, what's up next for the DeMoss family? Let's discuss. Teddy DeMoss, played by the well-loved Nathan Lane, is also a resident of the iconic Arconia. Teddy invested in the podcast after it became successful, but made sure his company was the main sponsor. Teddy, who used to work closely with Oliver, has skeletons in his own closet, as we come to find out. Him and his son Theo, who is deaf, used to moonlight as murderers and grave robbers, which is just lovely, right? We see at the end of the season that both DeMosses have been arrested and jailed for their crimes, but what does that mean for Season 2? Could they return in some capacity or other? Do they get out of jail somehow? We hope so. What do you think of the family DeMoss? Next up, what exactly does Detective Williams know? One of our favorite characters of the whole series is Detective Williams, who is on the Kono murder and initially closes it. However, after her wife listens to the podcast, she reopens the investigation. She becomes convinced that she has missed some detail in regards to Tim's death, all thanks to our favorite podcasters. Bravo, guys. Towards the end of the season, she becomes friends with the trio and works with them to try and figure out exactly what went down. During the last moments of the finale, it seems like she has it all figured out and tells the guys not to say anything. But why? Does she know know of a plot to set them up? Was she warning them to say anything before she could help in their defense somehow? We need answers. What does she know? We can't wait for season 2, as there are only so many conspiracy theories we can read in regards to what Detective Williams knows or doesn't know. What's your theory? We want to know who was watching Jan next, so stay with us. So as we saw at the end of season 1, Jan was stabbed, moments after reading a note which simply said, "I'm watching you." Does this mean Jan was lying when she claimed to be Tim's murderer? Who is watching her? And why was she stabbed? Did the person who sent her the note also kill Tim? There's so much to unpack here. Well, it turns out that we know she stabbed herself to try and deflect attention, but what about the note? Nobody else saw the note, so it doesn't make sense that Jan would write it to herself unless she has some sort of split personality disorder, or was she planting the note there for someone else to find on her behalf? We think the most plausible theory is probably that someone else in the building was suspicious of her and let her know exactly what they thought. What are your thoughts on this plotline? Let us know in the comments below. So, will our favorite podcasters actually be evicted in season 2? Let's discuss. So as we know, Oliver and Mabel especially were suffering financially before their podcast became a hit. Mabel was staying at her aunt's old place while Oliver was thousands of dollars in debt. Charles was the only one who didn't seem as hard up, but he had made noises about wanting to get back into acting as he had been out of work for quite some time. They'd been threatened with eviction multiple times in the past, not only because they kept falling behind when rent was due, but because of the negative attention the podcast was bringing to Bunny's building. After they solved Tim's murder, Bunny has a quick change of heart and lets them stay. But now they've become suspects in another murder. Are they right back to square one when it comes to their perilous situation of staying in the Arconia? We want answers. What do you guys think will happen to them? Next up, we want to know what will happen to the guys. Stay tuned. So, as we saw, Charles and Oliver come rushing to Mabel's apartment to find her in somewhat of a sticky situation, to put it mildly. As we mentioned earlier, she is found in front of Bunny's body in what appears to be a very compromising position. We then see the three chums being escorted out of the building and into waiting police cars. Everyone sees this happen. Neighbors, fans of the pod, and maybe tellingly, Cinda. Mabel looks guilty as heck in her blood-stained clothes, and it will be pretty hard to convince people otherwise, as first impressions count for so much. Will they get out of this horrible situation? We know they have the smarts to do so, but how will season 2 pan out? Maybe with the guys in jail? Or will they have gotten off between seasons? Something for the showrunners to think about, but we do need answers. Last but not least, will the popular podcast continue? When someone is arrested with a heinous crime, their reputation is usually tarnished for good, even if they are proven innocent or are the owners of a hit podcast. They figured out who Tim's murderer was, but now there is another murder to solve. Will the popular podcasters get a chance to delve into it themselves, or will they be in the middle of a trial come season 2? It's almost certainly going to be the murder of Bunny, which will dominate season 2, but what we don't know is what role our three heroes will be playing when it rolls around. What do you think? Did Mabel do it? Let us know below. As always, thanks for tuning in, guys, and remember to join us next time for some more revelation.